Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Seasonal Wire, the platform where we speak truth to power. As ever, if you're joining us for the first time and you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe to Seasonal Wire on YouTube. How do you do that? Go ahead and subscribe. Hit the subscription button, the red button. Give us hit the subscription button, and of course, give us a thumbs up. Help us reach more people. We really appreciate your support. Today being the 15th of October 2023, it's a nice sunny day. Happy Sunday, I like to say. Um, let's go into it. We're going to hear the foreign minister for South Africa, Minister Pandor, really talk about the what is going on against the Palestinians. The war can't ignore Palestinians suffering. Let's listen to what she has to say, and she's really on point. Let's have a listen. Let's have a listen.
I don't know where you get this energy. He sends me messages at 3 a.m. You must issue a statement on this. Why are you saying nothing on that? Comrade Ronnie, there you are. He takes advantage because he knew my father. He thinks that he's my father. But I'm very glad to be here. I begin by saying the world is a very troubled place.
Note she's wearing the Palestinian trademark. I think the scarf. As a that's just a statement there.
And I don't want us to pretend that it is easy. It's not. We are faced with a very challenged world. I realized this when in 2021 I was sitting in a summit of the Executive Council of the African Union, and it was whispered to me that the African Union Commission chairperson had issued an invitation to Israel to become an observer at the African Union. Imagine my horror. I decided at that moment that I would raise my arm and would propose that this decision be rescinded. I walked around the room seeking supporters. Of the 54 nations, I got 3. And I include SADC in that. But I said, nevertheless, this is not going to happen. I therefore lifted my arm and said, I wish to table a matter. I have learnt of this, and as South Africa, we object to it, and it must not be implemented. We want our leaders to discuss it. And we will never accept it as South Africa, and while we appreciate the role that the Organization of African Unity played in us achieving our freedom as South Africa, this decision of the AU Commission chairperson will make us consider whether we can be present in the African Union. I thought I would get support from many of the countries gathered in the room. But what I discovered is that countries that are oppressors, that continue to be colonial occupiers, are using financial muscle to provide granting aid to African countries and secure the depoliticized support of African countries for these oppressive nations. Among them, Israel and Morocco. They're playing a very negative role in Africa. And comrades, I'm being frank here because you, in this room, you are supposed to be trade union leaders, many of you, or you lead progressive organizations, and you are failing in your duty to convince governments in Africa and all other countries of the South that they cannot tolerate such situations. It can't be left to us as members of government to be the ones that take up these issues with no word from progressive organizations. This is intolerable and cannot continue. So I'm hoping out of this conference that you are going to decide, rise up, rise up, rise up. Don't say what's Comrade Naledi doing. That decision on Israel hasn't been implemented, and it won't be while I'm still there. But what are you going to do? You should be talking to all progressive unions worldwide. The unions in the United States of America, weak or strong, should be making it clear to President Biden they don't appreciate his statement, which has led to the slaughter we are seeing today.
Mm-hmm.
The union movement in the United Kingdom should be doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
If we know our work. I have no idea what has happened to our organizational capability. Because as South African leadership, our trade union movement was able to marshal under the worst oppressive chains. We were able to marshal international solidarity of a kind that has not been seen since the struggle against apartheid. Mm-hmm. Where have all these progressive leaders gone and why?
Good question.
Why are we not able to organize?
Good question.
Why are we only sitting in a room as 300? There should be 3,000 here. There's something wrong, and that's why I'm saying we're in a troubled world. And we need to recognize that the world has shifted. Because what has happened is, in a determined fashion, progressive values and principles have been hacked and hacked and hacked, and it is now difficult to find a voice of the left.
No lie. She told
and
no lie.
We need to revive.
Mm-hmm.
We need to organize.
Absolutely.
We need to be smart. We need to be strategic.
Please subscribe as you're watching.
And one thing I've realized is making good speeches does not assist.
Mm-hmm.
I may feel good that I had the right rhetoric at that platform, but if the next day my rhetoric has not led to action, my speech was useless.
Exactly.
So I hope out of this, NUMSA is going to lead a process where Comrade Irvin Jim and Comrade Chirwa will meet with their counterparts in all unions, whatever they are, and say, as South African trade union movement, let us lead. Let us lead. Let us agree for 1 month. Mm-hmm. None of our unions are going to list any Israeli goods out of any transport. Just one thing.
Fantastic. That's exactly what it is.
Let us see whether our leadership has convening power or not. This week coming, a number of proposed resolutions are going to come before the United Nations. We must keep our eye on that process. We must ensure it's the right kind of resolutions. Today, the people of Palestine need of help. Mm-hmm. They need medical supplies. They're unable to bandage wounds. They cannot provide help. Médecins Sans Frontières is doing a good job. They're absolutely there. But they are also being decimated. What are we going to do about that? Let's ask every South African, there are 62 million of us, they say. All of us must donate one thing, food or medical goods. And let us persuade an airline to take them all to the Egyptian border with Palestine and deliver those goods. Let's do something, comrades. Let's stop talking. Because the world is in a terrible place, and all it needs are a few good men and women, organizers, strategists. And not to organize because you're NUMSA only, but to organize everybody. What we have to put aside if you want to change the world are divisions between us. Because it doesn't make any sense to believe that I must be the most progressive, the most left, the most radical, and the world is suffering. Mm-hmm. The most progressive thing is to unite and get action. And that's what I hope you're going to begin to do. So anyway, on my story, on the presence of Israel as an observer in the African Union, I have managed to pause it for now with the support of my president, but it's not off the table in the AU. So again, I'm asking you, pay attention. Having said that, because I prepared very hard, I'm going to present my speech. And I begin by saying, One of the things we must realize is the developing South is caught in the middle of rising global tensions. I know it is not correct to speak of the South as though it's a homogeneous entity. But from my experience, I can say to you, it is the region that most hopefully has the basis and foundation for the kind of radical shift we need. So I look to countries of the South, not the North. And I think it's important that we do that. What we are seeing in the world is an increasing pushback against the forces that seek to promote collective action, international solidarity, and global cooperation. We see the re-emergence of tendencies toward right-wing nationalism, unilateralism, and populism as an ongoing trend. Comrades, another assignment, engage the media.
We need our own media.
Is it all right for a Palestinian journalist to be murdered, but it's not okay for a journalist from Canada to be murdered? What kind of value system is that?
Yeah.
We've been silent about Shireen Abu Akleh. She was murdered.
Yeah. I spoke about her, yes.
Before our eyes. The media today, since the period of the embeddedness of Iraq, totally without objectivity, except Al Jazeera. That's the only one. The rest, I'm sorry. But you need to be active proponents of an objective media that informs, that is balanced, and that tells the truth. Not a media that lies and tells you a quarter of the story. So we've got to address all these things. What we see in the globe today is widening inequality. And we know that the economy of the globe continues to deliver inequitable and unjust outcomes. Developed countries have selectively opted out of the observance of international law, while they continue to insist that rules must be implemented by developing countries, even at the cost of providing services to their people. Just last year, Ghana was facing an incredible financial meltdown. They approached the IMF. And this year, the IMF has suddenly reported that Ghana is going to see amazing growth after they received loans from the IMF. But nobody is examining, do the children of Ghana have classrooms? Do they have teachers in those classrooms? Are they able to go to hospital and get treatment? Are the people of Ghana getting housing? Because the first target of IMF loans is public services. So it's important that we look not just at what support is provided, but at the quid pro quos that governments have to make in order to have access to that funding. Developed countries have certainly not met their commitments to the developing world and are consistently shifting responsibility to us in the global south. You must address climate change. You must stop using coal. You must reduce emissions. You must do A, B, and C.
The hypocrisy of the statement
We've
alone.
developed, they had thousands of years to develop, and in a short space of time, we must arrest our development and respond to their demands. I'm not saying coal is what we should use. I'm not saying we shouldn't reduce emission. Don't misunderstand me. But I'm saying the kinds of demands being made on developing countries without appropriate resource responses are actually demands that are unconscionable. So what this has led to is it's become increasingly difficult to pursue sustainable development goals. We saw this year that the Secretary General of the United Nations has indicated that far from moving in a positive fashion, the world is actually going backwards. We now have more poverty, more inequity, more joblessness. So the fundamental crises of our time call for international responses, in our view. If we accept that the world is increasingly more fragmented, it provides an opportunity for those concerned with economic justice, yourselves, to work toward creating a genuinely progressive alternative. Progressive forces around the world need to push for multipolarity and a strengthened, fairer, and more inclusive multilateralism by exerting more influence on global debates. We should not be silent. We should be having loud views.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make our economies work for the common good, and we need to take all the measures necessary to protect our planet. We believe that what is needed is a different kind of multilateral architecture, which is more suited to today's challenges of the world. In our own view, Comrade Ronnie, despite its inadequacies, it is our belief that the United Nations must remain the primary locus for political, security, and development decision-making, as it remains the most representative global body, despite its shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
We believe a complete overhaul of the UN system is needed so that the UN Security Council is democratized and reflects the current balance of forces in the global system.
Mm-hmm.
It's unacceptable, 8 decades nearly after its creation, 5 nations still wield disproportionate decision-making power
Indeed.
in the Security Council.
Indeed.
And those 5 number among the most problematic countries in the world.
Absolutely.
The causes of many of the problems I referred to today.
She hit the nail on the head. Well said.
So the overhaul of the UN system should include enforcement of decisions taken by what we hope will be a democratized UN Security Council. We also believe we should no longer accept a situation where countless UN resolutions are passed by the vast majority in the UN General Assembly, but are merely ignored. We've had repeated calls, as Comrade Khalid has said, from UN member states for Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories to the 1967 borders. These decisions have been ignored, and instead, we have witnessed the burgeoning expansion of illegal settlements on Palestinian land, growing oppression of the Palestinian people, gross violation of their human rights, and the Gaza Strip being turned into an open-air prison, regularly denied electricity, water, and fuel. The current denial is not new. It's been happening time and time again. For 16 years, Gaza has been under siege, with its people struggling to survive the ongoing land, air, and sea blockade imposed by Israel, with Palestinians denied exit and entry into the Strip. I was horrified when one of our former leaders, Comrade, I don't know if I should call him Comrade anymore, Comrade Teralekota, said that Israel is not an apartheid state. Well, the Palestinians are denied free exit and entry into their own country. They do not have free movement. We didn't have free movement under apartheid. Palestinian people use separate entrances when they go through.
I needed to say something here. What is happening in Palestine right now is akin to what has happened in South Africa, and even more so. The similarity is not doesn't end there. South Africa today, when Cecil Rhodes used that Land Reform Act to take away the land from Africans, telling them that they have to have some kind of papers, some kind of claim to that paper, without that, and they denied them access to these things. You took land from people that actually it belonged to, and told them they have to have certain documentation to lay claim to any land, and of course you are in control of that documentation. So 92% or 90% of the land was given to 8% settlers. 90%, the people who own the land, the Africans, they end up on 10% of the land. And now that figure has fallen to maybe 80%, 70 something. Okay, let's say 70, let's say 75%. So not much has changed in South Africa. Now look at Israel. Israel, two-state solution would mean that you have two states independent of each other, not one controlling the actions of the other, and then blaming those that they put in those impossible situations about when they're trying to say, look, this is our land. Keep in mind, this land belongs to the Palestinians. The Balfour Declaration of the 1915, where they tabled this declaration and in Westminster in the UK. This is where the genesis of all this is. But nobody wants to talk about that. So kudos to her. I'll come and talk about that in greater detail later on. This is in my own opinion. We have to get the balanced view. I'm not interested in anybody killing the other. That is not the point. The fact of the matter is this: there is no two-state solution. How is it that you can have one state with two different parts in another state, and then that other state that's controlling both sides is not allowing the other one to develop? Is that a two-state solution? That's not a real solution. Again, this is just my own view, and it leans towards what Minister Pandor is saying. But let's proceed.
To the border, we had to use separate entrances under apartheid. Palestinian children do not have free access to education. It was the same for us. So I don't know what more Israel should do for Comrade Ligota to recognize that it is an apartheid state.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen today increased Israeli aggression under the most far-right Israeli government we've ever seen. And we've seen the inaction by the Security Council, the very body whose mandate is to maintain international peace and security.
Laughable, frankly.
Despite the fact that the root cause of this conflict is illegal occupation, we have heard a tirade of criticism of Palestinians from Western powers and unflinching support for the occupying power. Despite the fact that I've been called all kinds of names because I refused to call Russia an occupying power of Ukraine. I've always objected to double standards. These type of double standards are the result of a global system which is skewed in favor of the powerful, to the detriment of those fighting for their rights and self-determination.
Indeed.
I repeat, it is imperative that social movements raise their voices in solidarity with the Palestinian people, particularly given the notably biased media coverage of the current violence. Within the United Nations, we have seen almost unanimous support among member states for ending the illegal economic blockade of Cuba, which is now entering its 61st year. Yet, the Cuban people continue to be denied access to life-saving medicines, essential goods, and the right to trade as any other sovereign nation. These are injustices that once more need to be taken up by the Global South and progressive forces worldwide to create a groundswell of popular support for the Cuban people, as well as the people of Palestine and all oppressed people all over the world. In South Africa, as the South African Department of International Relations and Cooperation, we wanted to provide support to the people of Cuba after they sent an appeal to us. When our opposition parties got hold of our intention, they, through an organization called AfriForum, took us to court. And the court ruled that I must use that money for poor people in South Africa and not provide anything to the people of Cuba. Of course, I'm appealing that decision, but here's my troubling point. The progressive forces of South Africa have never spoken up in support of my fight in court. And AfriForum is decimating all the progressive gains we have made in South Africa, including affirmative action, and we are allowing it to happen while we live. We are also articulating calls that we should overhaul the current global financial and trade architecture, and much of the world is joining us in this call. We believe we need a fundamental reset of the Bretton Woods institutions, including the IMF, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization.
Agreed. Totally
Multilateral development finance institutions need to be redesigned to respond to the challenges we are confronted with and to assist countries to meet the sustainable development goals. They must help us respond effectively to public health emergencies and to mitigate climate change. The IMF needs to be repurposed and should provide counter-cyclical lending in times of debt distress, enable debt restructuring and relief, and provide liquidity to all countries that require it.
Yeah.
I'm raising all these things, Comrade Chira, because I believe while we should have the debates you will have in this meeting, we also must look at the real situation of the globe and determine how we interface with these challenges and address them. We are fortunate as South Africa to be part of the BRICS partnership. And in BRICS, as the BRICS countries, we've been working toward developing a more equitable, balanced, and representative global governance system. This includes the restructuring of the global financial architecture. We have built up an institution such as the New Development Bank, which we own as BRICS, and it has given us, as emerging economies, greater control over lending and greater autonomy over the progress and course of our development. As we discussed in the most recent BRICS summit, which we hosted as South Africa, the concept of countries opting to conduct trade in their own currencies is to us a welcome development.
Absolutely.
And we are now investigating how we can multiply such practice and have it available to all of us.
Yes.
Emerging economies are key to reforming global governance. The fact that we've had emerging economies holding the G20 presidency for the last 4 years is an opportunity that we should not waste as countries of the South. Indonesia held the presidency last year and brought back development issues into G20. India held it this year and sustained that focus. Brazil is assuming the G20 chair next year, and we must ensure it holds the ground. And in 2025, South Africa will be chair of G20. And again, we must strengthen the progressive ground. With leading countries of the global South able to set the world agenda, this is an opportunity for all of us to push for real change. Let's not waste it. The demands that were made over 50 years ago by the global South when it met as NAM, that we should overhaul the rules of international trade, reform the international financial system, and recognize the sovereignty of each state over its natural resources.
Absolutely.
All of these, articulated over 50 years ago, are gaining momentum today. The Global South is calling for cancellation of historical debt.
It must.
There must be content to our progressive agenda. Content. The issuance of new IMF special drawing rights is something South Africa has been insisting upon the expansion of concessional development financing, and technology transfer.
Why that is particularly justified, in my opinion, of writing off of debt, is that as we speak, in all countries, bar none, in the global north, many of major countries, you can see the loot of ornaments, artifacts, human remains of Africans and others being displayed in museums, earning money, and then they're coming up and saying, "Oh no, it's best kept. We will take better control of it." And of course, now, as you know, in the UK, many of those artifacts are going missing to the extent that one of the people in charge of it has had to resign, and others making excuses, and the stuff looted. So I agree. Any debt that is, all of it should be written off, because this entire global system has it's been designed to ensure that there is debt impoverishment in Africa. That is their plan. That's the agenda, and we must confront it. So I support Minister Pandor fully. Let's go ahead and listen to what she's saying here.
All of these are based on the concept of the right to development, which many of us have forgotten. Ironically, all of these principles form part of a declaration that the UN adopted in 1974. But this was largely disregarded by multilateral bodies that instead imposed neoliberal policies on developing countries to ensure they implement extreme trade liberalization to their people's cost. Today, developing countries, which include the Africa Group, India, and Cuba, have tabled a proposal on the reform of the WTO, a proposal called Strengthening the WTO to Promote Development and Inclusivity. The proposal cites World Bank data to show that the gap in per capita GDP between the developed and developing world has widened since WTO was created, and calling for special and differential treatment to be upheld in future agreements. The proposal calls for respect for the right of countries to adopt different economic models and supports diversification and development. We also require multilateral security arrangements. We need to reject military alliances that divide the world into blocs, but do not offer answers to the challenges we confront. We are seeing now the weaponization of the ocean, Indo-Pacific Alliance, and so on. All of this is meant to take unipolar control of the oceans and deny us the right to peace and development which the oceans offer the world. What we need today, more than ever before, and that's why this conference is, to me,
you can't draw a line in the sea. You can't. Try it. Go draw a line in the sea. You can't draw it. That's what she's talking about there. And this block business. She's so right about it. And it's time, we Africans, I mean, there is so much to say on this. But let's listen to the Minister Pandor here of South Africa.
Vitally important. We need international solidarity. There's an urgent need for this in responding to the crises confronting us. During our struggle in South Africa, the principle of international solidarity was one of the key pillars of our struggle. It was through this pillar that civil society, political parties, academia, and other sectors all over the world were mobilized to isolate the apartheid regime. This pillar of international solidarity made an immense contribution to our victory against apartheid. to the extent that some analysts have even tried to elevate it above other very important pillars, such as the underground, the armed struggle, which Comrade has referred to, and the mass struggle, which we must never forget. These four pillars of the struggle complemented and reinforced each other to deliver the death of the apartheid regime. So again, we need to revive international solidarity as a pillar. We need to revive underground as a pillar. We need to revive armed struggle as a pillar. And we need to ensure mass struggle as a pillar.
Absolutely.
The international struggle against apartheid embodied humanity's struggle against discrimination and social exclusion. Our post-apartheid South Africa has attempted to continue this tradition of active internationalism on the continent and globally. We've tried to play our part in the renewal of Africa, promoting South-South cooperation, engaging countries of the North in the interest of Africa, and striving for the transformation of the global system of governance. We know we benefited and we are trying to use our benefit in the interest of others. We believe that today internationalism is going to be decisive in crystallizing new forms of organizing political forces for meaningful transformation. But as I said earlier, we need a strategic approach to the search for a better international order, one that is equitable, just, humane, inclusive, and democratic. So while I agree with BDS and the focus it has, I think we need to discuss how do we activate this in a manner that allows us to achieve the outcomes we desire, and not as an illustration of our ability to organize. And I haven't yet had that strategic advice. So with the BDS intervention at the ANC conference in 2017, we did indeed remove an ambassador from Israel. But I haven't seen it advance the peace agenda. So how do we act together to make gains in the struggle, rather than to have illustrations of action? This is the kind of strategic discussion I hope we can have at some time.
Absolutely
I believe
right,
we need
Minister.
to continue as South Africa to contribute to the building of a global progressive movement for a better Africa and a better world. People need to be shaken out of complacency and distraction. Progressive forces of the left need to step in, need to provide hope and vision, and offer up concrete pathways to political action. Across the global south, the progressive community has begun to rally. We look forward to the expansion of brave, united, vibrant social movements. As the great revolutionary leader of Cuba, President Fidel Castro, said, we need to unite today to build the tomorrow we yearn for, to vindicate the always excluded, and to rescue faith in humanity. I hope we can do this, and I thank you for listening to me.
That's awesome speech. Honestly, let's hear the clap. Let's hear it. It's awesome. See that? See that? See that? Just see that clap. You know, just see the clap. And I really want us to really key in on many of the things you said here. This can no longer, it can no longer be business as usual. The old structures of the oppressive dominance by colonial powers and preventing real discussions, justice, truth, fairness, equity, to flourish in this world. Those days are long gone. We are in a multipolar world, and that is what is gradually manifesting, despite the attempt to drag us back into the colonial era. It is the move to a multipolar world is unstoppable. Um, and leaders such as Minister Pandor of South Africa in this movement, there are people to be applauded, and I fully support what she's saying there. Let me say this, my own opinion. On the outset, it's clear for me. I will come back and read at some point the speech about uh, um, the Balfour Treaty and its ramifications. But in the end at the end, what should happen is if we have if we have a proper Security Council with proper representation, there should not it should not be that difficult to say, okay, fine, we're having a two-state strategy here, and that two-state would be Palestine on one side, Israel on the other. They have their own borders, they're in control, and they don't interfere with each other. That is what should happen. But anything else, under the guise of saying they are doing this, they're doing that, the land is being taken away more and more from the Palestinians. That is the plain fact. So that is not, and the UN, as it currently stands, has shown that it is supporting injustice. That's just my view, and of course, it dovetails to what Minister Pandor has just said in this broadcast. Let us hear your views. I'm not here to try and say this one I'm anti this. I'm just saying that what you eyes can see cannot deceive you. What you can see with your own eyes that is wrong, you must say it is wrong. You mustn't allow somebody else to tell you, no, 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 what you see, I'm going to interpret it for you, it's right. No, let your heart tell you what is really good, what is bad, and don't ignore that. Don't ignore your gut feelings. When you see something is wrong, that's why I applaud her statement here. Palestine is indeed suffering. And what should happen? This Palestine should be allowed to be a complete state without any interference from another state. Period. That is and that's the problem. And they have never been allowed to exist as a state. Never. By those, keep in mind, that were given land without the Palestinians saying yes to or being part of that discussion. This was an imposition on the Palestinians in that 1915 Balfour Treaty. I'm going to read it out. I'm not going to show it now, but I'm going to read it out because I do believe that it is better to put context. And some people will say, oh, don't go back and read it. But you see, that's the genesis of all of this. People are saying, yes, of course, people are saying go back to 1967 borders. And I agree with that, if that's the general consensus. But it's to put proper context, one has to read this. And I'm not trying to be, it says here, and this is what was written by, let me see. It was written to dear Lord Rothschild by Balfour, the Balfour, some Lord Balfour, I believe it is. So it says, dear Rothschild, this is on the November 1917, after I think it was probably the First World War was coming to an end. And of course, I don't know, we know what's going on with that, but we're not going to go to that. Let us just read what he said. Because this is not about trying to, how can I put it? It's just trying to put a proper context and things so that we understand that. So I'm going to read that to you. Here we go. It says, dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the cabinet. So the cabinet has approved, listen, the taking of Palestinian land without the Palestinians having any say in this. That's what it's saying. Let's carry on. It says here, the Majesty's government would view His Majesty's government with His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. It being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which shall prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. This was written on the 2nd of November 1917. No part of this mentions the Palestinians being aware of this, being part of this process. This was an imposition on the Palestinians. That is the point that I'm making about that statement. It was an imposition, and it remains an imposition that their land has been split into two, that many of them, there's more of them outside than there is in their land because of actions taken in the British Parliament. That's a fact. It's not, and to say this doesn't mean that I am misquoting. Those are the facts of the matter. This was said, by at the Foreign Office. I mean, so your Foreign Office is impacting the lives of people thousands of miles away in another country that the people are not even aware of, and those people are supposed to abide by that decision. Is that fair? Is that just? You think about that. Is it fair? Is it just? That's the question we're asking. Anyway, I'll leave it here. And I want to just once again, I applaud Minister Pandor of South Africa, Foreign Minister Pandor of South Africa, for her candor and her forthrightness in speaking up and standing up for Palestinians in the face of this. Nobody supports violence either way, but the entire, sadly, the foundation of this stuff, of what is going on now, it was always going to point to the direction of where things have led to right now. And anybody trying to now say, oh, we didn't, they're not, they are really addressing the foundation. If you read the context of what I just said about the Balfour Declaration, then you will know that this was creating problems that will not be solved. That will not be solved. The only solution is a two-state solution. It is clear. It is clear that the UN as it stands is not capable of providing that two-state solution, because the UN members, many of them, support the creation of one of the members of the Security Council. There lies the problem. And the veto by one of them there means that nothing will happen. So the UN as a body, it is not fit for purpose, in my opinion. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Citizen Network, the platform where we speak truth to power. We've been watching Minister Pandor, Foreign Minister Pandor of South Africa, speaking about about the issue of Palestine, and stating that the world cannot ignore Palestinian suffering. So thank you very much. Please do subscribe to Citizen AY, the platform where we speak truth to power. So go ahead and subscribe to Citizen AY. Hit the notification button, give us thumbs up. What we are saying here, you will notice that the discussion has really been about real facts of the matter. The issue here is not about religion. It's not about one religion or the other. The similarity, and I'm going to come and explain that, the similarity between what is happening in Palestine, that is now Israel now, Palestine, Israel, let's say it that way, and what happened in South Africa. The similarity has and remains land. The land belonging to the Palestinians being taken over by as the word they used. Let me use the words that Lord Rothschild used. Taken over by the Zionist Federation. Those are his words. Now, those are what they used in there. Now, same thing. Conversely, you look at what happened in South Africa. Cecil Rhodes, under the government imposed by the colonials, took over the land from Africans. And that land till today, over 75% of the land in South Africa today is still in the hands of those settlers, colonials in effect. Whereas the people who own the land, they don't even have up to 50% of the land that belongs to their own ancestors. So These are the kind of fundamental issues, and that's where there's a fundamental flaw in the UN body. It will never address these fundamental issues, and that's why this problem will, as long as UN is in existence, this problem will not be solved. For as long as the UN is in existence, with those 5 members, and 3 of whom are from the colonial North, UK, US, France, this problem will not be solved. It will not be solved. But anyway, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts on this? We are focusing. I'm not even going to any more details about, you know, what is going on. I'm just focusing on what is really happening and the solutions. This is about a land grab. It's nothing to do with the religion. It's about grabbing a land that belongs to somebody else and trying to use justification to keep that land. That is not just. It's the same case in Palestine, and it's the same case in South Africa. Now, of course, South Africa is trying to deal with that, but it's the same thing. There's no difference. It was apartheid then. Now it's covered. It's hidden now in South Africa, but it's apartheid in the face. I mean, this is the open prison. The people in Palestine are effectively open prison. They are not a nation. It's an open prison. Anyway, let's hear your thoughts. You're watching Season Wide, the platform where we speak truth to power about Litron. Please share your comments. Let's hear from you. You're watching Season Wide, the platform where we speak truth to power. Thank you, and bye for now.